Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
It was not a religion that attacked us that September day. It was Al-Qaeda, a sorry band of men which perverts religion.
All of this was brought upon us in a single day, and night fell on a different world, a world where freedom itself is under attack.
So, how old were you?
So I was about 13.
I was 9.
Yeah, I was 9 as well.
What exactly do you remember of 9/11?
I remember on 9/11, the first that we even had any indication that something was wrong was during homeroom. The TVs that we had at Stafford High School all of a sudden changed from our normal homeroom station that we would watch, and it was showing a really shaky picture of a tall building with a plane in it, and it was smoking, but we didn't know what it was, and I had never even heard of the Twin Towers or of the World Trade Center or anything. And so I remember being really scared, but also having no idea what was going on. And I think I thought maybe we were going to have World War III or the world was coming to an end. And I remember some parents were coming to pick their kids up from school, but Mom didn't come to pick us up from school. She was probably at work. And so the rest of us were just in confusion because Mr. Kennedy, the principal, didn't make an announcement or tell anyone what was happening or anything like that.
Okay, so I remember I was in 4th grade, obviously, and the teacher said that something bad had happened, but she wasn't allowed to tell us what, and I remember so many kids were getting taken out of school, and I was really nervous and scared, and I didn't understand what was going on. I just remember being really scared, but I didn't fully understand because I don't think I saw videos of really what happened until the 5-year anniversary, because I feel like Mom was really protective of that. So that was my vague memory of exactly what happened on that day.
I didn't know anything about it at school. I remember going home and my babysitter was there, and I remember he was watching it on TV. It was Greg Cole. I just remember I saw it. My reaction, I'm ashamed of my reaction till this day. I thought it was cool. Big explosions, 9 years old. I'm forever be ashamed. I hate myself for it. I didn't know. I was a stupid kid. And I just remember not really reacting to it until I eventually realized what it was. I remember the whole day. I just later on my parents were home, they were watching it, and I just remember just not reacting to it. I thought it was an emergency, but I didn't think it was anything unusual. Big explosion, something you see in a movie, so that's what I remember about that.
What specific clips do you remember?
I remember the clip of, I think, the first plane, once it had lodged itself into the first tower, and there was just smoke billowing up, and you could see the plane sticking out. One thing I remember particularly is after getting home from school, Mom had the news on, and they kept talking about and showing pictures of when the tower was falling. You would see little black things falling from the tower, and they kept saying, "Those are people, those are people." And so I remember that really clearly, just the pictures of people just falling or jumping out of the building, dying.
Yeah.
I definitely remember the scene of the plane crashing in the building. I remember the ones from New York. I don't have any memory of what happened in the Pentagon, but I remember the Twin Towers going down.
I remember that.
That will be forever in my brain.
That's the one image.
Yeah. And there's this one scene of this woman. There was a journalist who was and this woman was running with no shoes, just screaming she needs to get her kid or something.
I remember a lot of you see the papers coming down,
yeah,
and the
and
cloud,
you can see people.
But I don't. And
dropping.
I remember the actual towers on fire. I don't remember that's really it for images.
All right. So how exactly did your family come together?
I remember that it was pretty shortly after 9/11 that Mom took us kids, the 4 of us, back to church, or I guess the 3 of us at that point because Mary was older, because that made her realize that we needed to start going back to church and like start worshiping God and praying, because it just seemed a little bit like maybe it was the end of the world.
Well, I mean, for our family, I don't know that we like, I know that Mom like had the two of us and like we kind of just like talked about it, but I don't think like you and I were both so young we didn't understand. And like Mary Rose and Katie, I remember Mary Rose and Dad like talking in great lengths about like Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein, and I was so terrified of them. Like I didn't understand what it was. I feel like our family didn't really like talk about it. I don't know if you have the same like experience, Tim, but like I feel like we just didn't talk about it that much. And I was so scared of it. I didn't understand it, and I think that's why I was so scared of it. I don't think we like coped with it, if you will. We just were like, oh, this horrible thing happened, you know, but we're all safe and like we love each other, and that's it. That's kind of, because we weren't really affected.
I don't think we bonded at all. We moved on with life. I think.
How did it affect you personally?
I think, I mean, I was a pretty young child, and up until that point, nothing had really happened in the U.S., but because, as you might not remember, I was a really fearful child. I was always scared of being attacked by another country or if we were going to go to war. And so I think it was almost like one of my worst fears realized. But then being a little bit older, it kind of was really scary because it also made me realize that living in the U.S. didn't mean that we were like invincible or untouchable, which is, I think, the impression that I always grew up with in school when we talked about history and wars, was this idea that the U.S. was like amazing and this great country, and no one would ever attack us. And that changed for me, realizing that someone had attacked us.
When President Bush announced the war on terror, what was your reaction and your memory of it?
I do remember him. I'm sure that I wasn't watching like a speech if it was televised. I don't even know if it was, but I do remember hearing clips of it, him saying that we were going to go to war on terror and that you were either with us or against us, I think was what he said. And I do remember being really scared, because I didn't know what that meant, and it seemed like a really abstract thing to go to war against a concept and not a group of people. And I think it made me worry about, like, would that mean people were going to get drafted? Would people I know have to go to war and die, which did end up happening a couple of years later, actually. But I don't think I didn't have any strong political views because I think I was still too young to understand even really what war meant, because I had never experienced it in any like real sense. Of course, there was a Gulf War when I was little, but I was too young to know what that was.
When you're that young, you're kind of just like, oh my gosh, you know, we're going to another country to fight. Okay, but if they come over here and affect our lives, like I was afraid that it was going to be like World War II almost, like I would be like out of school and like, I don't know, that just really scared me. But then like, it was almost like, unfortunately, the way our country handled it, we weren't informed, and it was like we just didn't know anything about it. We didn't hear about it really, except for like the like amount of dead bodies or whatever. But at the time, like I was just really scared, I think.
I remember they announced the invasion, and I knew we were going to war and everything like that. I didn't really understand until our family lost someone overseas. Well, we knew somebody. My aunt lost her son. He was a Marine corporal who died in the early months of the war. So that's when it first hit me. I think that's when it first hit me about the war and about terrorism and about what's going on. And then that's where I understood what our country was doing over there. Like I saw the loss firsthand. I was at Arlington. I saw him get buried. I saw the Marines march him in. And I think that's when I really realized, that's when I paid attention about President Bush.
Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America.
Those who attacked us sought to demoralize us, divide us, to deprive us of the very unity, the very ideals that make America, America.
My fellow citizens, For the last 9 days, the entire world has seen for itself the state of our union, and it is strong.
On September 11th, I was around 7 or 8 years old, and what I remember from the TV is the video of the people falling from the building because they had no other way to escape. That is probably the one thing that's burned in my mind. However, I've always been told a story that on Memorial Day, when the planes flew over for the big parade, my sisters and my mom and my dad were all outside cheering, and I was in fact hiding in the basement crying because I thought there was another terrorist attack. So that is my story, and I just hope our generation has stories to remember, because the next generation won't.